Merci Alain Touraine. Je crois que, d'une certaine façon, vous avez parlé d'un réveil d'une nouvelle conscience éthique et surtout environnementale à propos de la mer. E penso que também, com algumas propostas muito concretas, primeiro uma política marítima comum, vamos ver se tem pernas para andar, não é? De facto, nós já temos a política marítima integrada e devo dizer, já hoje se falou bastante do relatório que foi aprovado no Parlamento recentemente, um relatório com 2 relatores, um dos transportes e um das pescas. Eu fui a relatora das pescas e foi realmente bastante difícil conseguir o financiamento que obtivemos e que é razoável para um ano, mas precisamos de facto de mais para garantir esta política marítima integrada. Outra ideia, o Observatório Europeu do Litoral e, sobretudo, a questão que está aqui a ser cada vez mais reforçada do papel das regiões como sendo verdadeiramente indispensável para o sucesso integrado e global desta estratégia do Atlântico. E, sem mais demoras, passava agora a palavra ao Sr. Colin Wolfe, diretor do Diretorado-Geral para a Política Regional da Comissão Europeia. Aliás, temos estado a falar tanto do envolvimento das regiões que realmente cumpre agora dar a palavra a quem vem aqui falar-nos em nome da Comissão Europeia precisamente sobre política regional. Mr. Wolfe, please, I'll give you the floor.
Madam Chairman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, congratulations to Portugal for the organisation of this event. One of the things that I will be particularly struck by is what I will be bringing back to Brussels by way of impressions about today. And that's, I think, very important. It's a very important message from this conference. The first thing is that you've got so many people here. I believe there's well over 1,000 people gathered here today, and that in itself is very important. I was very struck this morning, Madam Chairman, also by the level of political commitment and political support. It was very, very clearly stated indeed, and I think that was very impressive. I was very impressed too by the media interest, and that's an important message that I think will be brought back to Brussels, and I think everybody should be aware of that. And I think too that one other thing that is striking for me is what you see outside here, and that is the involvement of so many different organisations, both regional and from the private sector. I think that all augurs extremely well for the success of this initiative. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here representing the European Commission, but as the Chairman said, rather more the regional policy side of that. But I'd just like to say to you that I think there's very good reasons to have regional policy involved in this great enterprise. I think in regional policy and in maritime affairs we have, I'm glad to say it, developed a good habit of working together. We, on the regional side, with our approach, have had, I hope, what has been useful input into the development of this EU strategy for the Atlantic. And in some ways, ladies and gentlemen, what we're doing is we're returning a compliment that our maritime affairs colleagues paid to us when we were tasked with the job of developing an EU strategy for the Baltic Sea region, a very similar, I think, initiative, which is now 2 years up and running, and which I think you'll be hearing more about. So there's a good habit of working together. But it's not just because we like each other and that we feel that working together is a pleasant experience. It's because there are, I think, very important linkages between what we do. And this is very important in terms of how we mobilize the regions. It's very important in terms of how we mobilize the policies, cohesion policy. It's very important in terms of how we mobilize the funding. Firstly, there's very clearly quite a deal of overlap in terms of substance. It may be very clear what is purely maritime. That's what happens out in the middle of the ocean. It may be very clear what is purely territorial in the centre of Europe or something. But it's also very clear, I think, ladies and gentlemen, that there's a very considerable area geographically of overlap. And that comes from the off-coast, the offshore area, running through the coastline itself and through into the hinterland, which, to my mind, is very much a continuum in terms of the way it should be developed. I think as well that it's very clear that there are many practical issues that overlap. I mean, if we take simple examples, if you're planning a trip for goods or for people, it's very likely that you will start on the land. You may well then have an important maritime or sea section, but it's very likely that your final destination will also be on the land again. So I think it's very clear that there has to be an integrated approach in respect of that. Exactly the same thing in relation to the environment. How much of the problems in relation to maritime pollution come because of our activities industrially or agriculturally or in terms of urban development on the land? And so on it goes if we're talking about the development economically of this area. It's very clear that exactly the same approaches in terms of supporting business, supporting entrepreneurship, supporting innovation, new ideas, we heard a great deal about it this morning, supporting training, supporting employment opportunities, that is exactly the same. Whether you're dealing with it right in the heart of the centre of the landmass, or whether you're dealing with it in relation to the coastline, the maritime environment, and so on. So I think in relation to the substance, there's a great deal of overlap and a great deal of opportunity to work together. But I think it's also true that maritime affairs, what Mrs. Damanaki referred to, and what we in cohesion policy and regional policy would see as our approach is rather similar. We heard a great deal this morning about the importance of an integrated approach, an approach that takes into account not just individual sectors and their policies, but looks at the interplay between them and how there are so many cross-cutting issues that we have to deal with, and that what is needed is a joined-up way of thinking. And I would say that I think one of the reasons that we find that there is so much in common is because of a commonality of approach. And it's not just, ladies and gentlemen, in terms of analysis, because I think we're looking at the modern world and we're saying that these matters, so many matters, interact. You can't look at energy policy and not think about the importance of its impact on the environment or transport policy or whatever. It's not just in terms of analysis, it's in terms of the policy reaction. It's in terms of how we deal with it, in terms of aligning the different sectoral policies, which I think is very important. And, ladies and gentlemen, the other very important matter, which is the alignment of the funding that goes with those policies. I don't think in this day and age we can afford, if we are serious about the objectives of Europe 2020, to look at policies in distinct boxes. We've got to look at the way they interact together. And I don't think, ladies and gentlemen, in this age of austerity, we have the luxury of being able to allow for our different funding lines to operate in different directions. So I think there are many very, very good reasons to, as it were, hitch cohesion policy, hitch regional policy, and the implication and commitment of the regions to this great vision that you've got for the Atlantic area. It seems to me to be common sense. It seems to me to be building on something that's already there. It seems to me that this is the way that you will have the greatest chance of success. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd also say just maybe a few words about the practicalities. It is actually the case that at the moment there are quite a number of regional policies, cohesion policy programs that I think are very helpful to your work. And I think not just alone now are they helpful in terms of the current programming, but I think that there's an opportunity to reinforce these, to fine-tune these in relation to the next programming period in a way that really links them to the ambitious plans you have for yourself. You may not be aware of it, but there is, it has been referred to, an Atlantic Area Transnational Cooperation Programme, which actually covers pretty much the area in relation to the European part of the Atlantic coastline. And there, what are the priorities? The priorities are to work on developing entrepreneurship and innovation by way of clusters and networks. That's something I heard an awful lot about this morning. Another priority is to look at how we can enhance and conserve our environment. Another thing that obviously is of great concern here. We're looking at a third priority, which it underlines the importance of mobility and connectivity. And a very important fourth priority, which is to look at how communities, this wasn't mentioned so much this morning, but how communities, rural communities, urban communities, so often find themselves in the Atlantic area in similar situations because they're peripheral, and so they should be sharing experiences and working together so as to be able to make sure that they do indeed survive, and so on. So there's this program, an important program, and it can be built on for the future. And it's not just the only program of its type, because there are other big transnational cooperation programs, one to the south, covering the Azores, Madeira and Canary Islands, which we heard about this morning. Another to the north, the Northern Periphery Programme, which runs out from the Nordic landmass through Faroe Islands, Iceland, all the way over to Greenland, which covers the northern part. So all of these are programmes that can be built on, maybe reconfigured, who knows, and developed in support of your work, the work that you're outlining here today. And they're not just the only programs. There are other many cross-border programs running between, for example, Spain and Portugal, or up towards the north between Ireland, Northern Ireland and Scotland, which are, that one. It's dealing with things like wind energy and tidal energy and so on and so forth. These are the ones that should be built upon. They should be reinforced. They should be reconfigured so as to be able to meet the challenges of what you want. And there are also many, many regional entity programs that can be useful. So, ladies and gentlemen, maybe we can pay a great deal of attention to this. It's very important for the future because now, as was said earlier, is the opportunity to build on this in the future, a new programming period coming up, many opportunities to make sure that your ideas, that they get their full place in those programs and that they get their full place too in the regional programs that are going to be run by Portugal or Spain or France or Ireland or the UK. I wish you the very best of luck. It's a very exciting project and initiative that you're involved with, and it's something that I'm going to take away with me and really tell the colleagues about back in Brussels. Thank you very much indeed.